Welcome to episode 99 of Coffee and Co-Read, your source for all things literary with Catherine.
And Kristen, where we believe there's nothing better than a hot coffee and an awesome book. Join us for our virtual book club where we take one book a month and dive into all the drama, adventure, and romance we can find. Hi, Catherine.
Hi, Kristen.
So, because it's January and there are a lot of talks in the air about people setting reading goals for the year. And, you know, it's January. It's the beginning of a new year. So we're going to jump on that train. So do you have reading goals? And if so, what have you set for yourself for the year?
So I think we did this in January of last year too. And my reading goal was to read 110 books because the year before I had read 100 books. And then last year I read like maybe 50 books. I was like so far off. But I feel like the way I'm reading now is different. And like I feel like when I set a specific number goal for myself, like I have a book I'm reading now on Kindle Unlimited, I think. And like it's super long. And I'm like, oh, do I want to not read this one because I want to hit my reading goal? And then I'm also like, should I finish this shitty book that I don't like because of my reading goal? So I'm like kind of giving up on the reading goal this year, I think, because like I'm just going to read what I enjoy and stop reading what I don't enjoy. So I guess that's my reading goal. Read what I like.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
That's good.
I don't want to get too focused on the numbers because I know that that's something that like my brain loves to focus on, things like that. So, you know, good times.
That's actually a really good point because I find that a lot of people focus on the amount of books you're reading, which is fine. Like if that's how you know, if that works for you, then that's great. But like I think that people are starting to not get away, but it's like you're not just reading for the sake of reading. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Now, to be fair, I do have a reading goal.
Yeah, which is like nothing against people that obviously have reading goals. No. It's just I found like 2 years ago, it worked for me. I read 100 books and I was super happy about it. But then last year, I kind of was disappointed in myself that I didn't get it. And now this year I'm like, why? I don't want to try to like force myself into it. So, but like, I don't know. I love the idea of reading goals.
Yeah, I set my first one last year, but I didn't set it until like maybe May or June. Mm-hmm. And I tried to remember, like I did add the books that I remembered reading earlier in the year.
That's a hard part.
So I did end up, I think I set my goal to be 50 books. Mm-hmm. And I got to, I think, 67 or 68.
Nice.
So I did reach my goal. Now this year I've set my reading goal to be 75. And I'm starting in January. Yeah. So we'll see. But again, like, most of the year last year, I wasn't doing my master's work. So I find that really slows down my ability to read. And even,
of course, yeah.
Sort of, like, not my desire to read, because I love reading. But when most of my master's program involves reading articles, sometimes when I don't have to read an article, I don't really want to read something else.
Yeah, that completely makes sense. And, like, not that we have to read these books, because obviously we don't have to be doing this podcast, like, but it is something that we are taking notes on them and we are doing them. So, like, it's not just reading an entire book for the hell of it. It's not like, and obviously we enjoy the books or we wouldn't be reading them, but it's still, it's not just reading for fun per se, even though it does turn out to be fun once we start talking about them and stuff.
Yeah, it's the homework aspect of it that is a little bit daunting sometimes.
Yeah.
Especially when you have, like, really thick books that you know have a lot of content. You're
Jesus
like,
Christ.
I gotta take
Crescent City. And also, Crescent City 3 is coming out this month. Really soon, actually. I don't have a calendar in front of me. I have old calendars. But I'm like...
In like...
a week?
7, 8, 9, 10... Like 12 days.
Yeah. So, like, that should count as 15 books, because it's fucking giant, I'm sure. Like, I don't know how big it is, but based on the size of the other ones, I'm like, that should count as more than one book when you finish that, as opposed to, like, Kindle Unlimited, you get 100-page book and you fly through that and it's all smut, and I love it too.
Yeah, I know.
But if that's going to count as one book, then Crescent City should count as like 5.
Yeah. It's funny, actually. So when I was looking at, I use Goodreads. Mm-hmm. Although I've heard some really good things about Storygraph.
I love Storygraph.
Also. Do you?
Yeah. But it's my math brain is like, graphs.
So the reason I like using Goodreads is because anything I do on my Kindle, like my Kindle app, automatically transfers over, which is nice. I don't have to manually add it, so that's helpful. But they, like, I looked at like my 2023 year-end review, and it was like, your shortest book was like 102 pages, and it was like just a pure smut book, and then your longest book was like, it was
Crescent
like
City 2.
Yeah, it was like 792 pages or something like that, and I'm like, these are both considered one book.
Yeah. So it's like, I don't know if I should start setting like page goals, but then I also listen to audiobooks, so I'm like, I'm just gonna go with the flow this year. I'm kind of doing that with like any type of resolution. It also doesn't help that like I got COVID basically the week after the first week of January, so it's like, can't do all the exercise goals I have because I'm sick, like, you know what I mean? So yeah, I'm kind of just, and like I also know that I start to like, when you set those goals of like, oh, I'm gonna lose weight this year and I'm gonna do this and blah 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 blah, it's always like you always fall off, or I always fall off the bandwagon. So I'm like, I'm just going to decide to do everything a go with the flow this year. See what happens. You know?
Yeah. And like, you could even like, without focusing, do you think that you could like just keep track of the books you've read, even in like a Google Doc, just to like, and then at the end of the year, you can be like, hey, I did that.
Yeah. Like, and
just because you're not working towards a specific number, you'll be happy with any number.
Yeah. So I guess I kind of have a, like, goal-ish of reading every day. Possibly. So, Storygraph does a, like, January thing where, like, if you put in every day that you've read, you can, like, be put in for prizes, and it's normally, like, ebooks or something. Cool. But, so I am going to do that for January, just try to read every day, and, like, just try to do it for as long after. I'm not going to be super hard on it. But I am still going to use Storygraph. I'm just not going to have a goal of, like, how many books to read, per se. Because Storygraph is just so cute, and I love the little graphs.
Yeah. I haven't looked at it.
Yeah. Yeah, fun times.
Yeah.
I think that's really all we got to say on that. Unless there's no... So yeah, guys, if you want to tell us your reading goals, we'd love to hear them. So you can reach out to us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, or email. Cool times.
Yeah, let us know what your reading goals are, and if you know any apps that are useful in tracking your goals.
Yeah, fun times. So just a heads up, this is not a spoiler-free zone, and things might get saucy. A little bit this week.
Is it a little bit?
Very late in the week.
Very light. Right. Because we've had this discussion that you literally get all the sauce this week. Or all the sauce in this book, you get all of it. I don't get to talk about any of it.
Sorry, dude. Stole it.
I know. Anyway, so this week is our third week with The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. So this week we are doing chapters 28 to 40. So last week, just as a little recap, they do our main character, Oraya, she does the second trial and saves a little girl, and she's really starting to sort of see that her father, Vincent, might not have humans' best interests at heart. Might not.
Maybe.
And so, and then her and Raihn, who is her ally now, they sort of fall into a uneasy truce, start training together, start killing vampires together out in the human district, and really start like learning each other's moves for the third trial. So then there is an explosion at the Moon Palace, which injures Minthy, and she can no longer compete. However, her request for withdrawal from the competition was denied. So Oraya does what she can and goes to the super creepy minister, lets him drink her blood so that Minthy can be removed.
Which is ridiculous. It's like, the gods say she can't. And then she's like, here's some of my blood. And he's like, the god has decided it's fine now.
Yeah. And remember, he said something really interesting in the last book in the last week, that she said, you want some human blood? And he said, oh no, it's much more than that.
Yeah. So that's a thinker.
Yeah. So that indicates that Oraya is not 100% what she seems. We pick up this week with chapter 28, and Oraya is back in the apartment right after giving the minister her blood, and she hears Raihn talking with Misha. Now, if you remember last week, Raihn was taken for questioning by Vincent's guard, Jasmine. And when we say questioning, we mean torture.
Yeah.
And Oraya asked Vincent not to break him, not to like hurt him too badly, and to send him back because he is her ally. She needs him for the Half Moon trial. And so now he's finally back. So he is talking to Misha, and she's still like pretty delirious, talking about how she called and he didn't come. And we don't really know who she's talking about right now. But Raihn just tells her not to worry about it and to rest. And he actually uses magic to send her to sleep. Oraya is like dizzy with vampire venom. She tries to hide it as she follows Raihn to another room. She doesn't want him to know that that's what she did. And he shows her his back. So apparently the skin on his back has been flayed off and he's been tortured. And she is like pissed.
Yeah.
Because she told Vincent not to break him. And she is thinking to herself, like, how much of this happened before I asked him not to do that, and how much of it happened after?
Yeah.
And we'll get into it a bit later, but Vincent, when she, like, talks to Vincent about this, I really don't like how he behaves.
Yeah, same. Well, there's a whole lot.
There's a whole lot, yeah. So she's actually worried about his wings. Mm-hmm. But he said that the reason he's been tortured so much is because he wouldn't reveal his wings. So I think it's actually really cool that all of the vampires can magic their wings away and bring them back, it seems.
Yeah.
Which is super neat.
It's also, it's weird what happens later in this book with his wings. And you're like, does nobody see him in the ring? I just don't understand how, like, she notices things about his wings, but apparently nobody else does, and he's not showing anybody else, but he does have them out during the trials, and there's people around all the time.
Yeah.
I just don't really understand. I guess there's a combo. You need the combo.
I guess, yeah.
But yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, so she's glad that he didn't reveal his wings because, like, obviously, if he had, they would have done worse damage to the wings themselves and made him probably unable to fly. Mm-hmm. But with his wounds the way they are on his back, it means that he probably can't take his wings out for a little bit until the back heals. Yeah. So she goes and gets some supplies and has him, like, lean over on the bed so that she can stitch his back up. And they discuss what they asked him during his torture session. And Raihn tells Oraya that he doesn't think the Rishon organized this explosion. Because that's what Vincent thinks. He thinks that the Rishon have come in and they're doing this as a rebellion and rebelling against him as the High Edge King. But Raihn doesn't think that's the case because he says that, like, the Rishon aren't organized anymore and they can't really pull something like this off. Oraya then takes this time to tell him that the minister has actually accepted Misha's withdrawal. And immediately he's like, what did you do?
I kind of wanted more from this. Like, I wanted him to find out.
I really did too. And so, like, she tries to deny that she did anything, but he tells her she's an awful actress. And he even, like, sees, so she bandaged her wrist with the bite on it. He sees that, and he's like, what happened? Tell me. Yeah. And she refuses to tell him. And, like, I really wanted her to admit it to him and for him to get, like, enraged that someone bit her, or, like, even for him to be like, oh, like, you helped her. I wanted something.
And, like, I want somebody to kill the creepy guy.
Yeah. I agree. He's a super creep. Anyway, so he tells Oraya that they're going to bring Misha somewhere tonight when the sun sets. And he actually explains to her what her delirious ramblings are about. And he says that when they found her, which this part I don't really understand. So he says that when they found her, she was trying to call on Atraxas, who is the god of the sun who gives her the firepower.
Yeah.
And said that her firepower wasn't working. But, like, what I don't understand is they came in the window the exact same time, and she was already, like, unconscious on the floor with her guts out. So, like, how does he know this is what happened?
I guess maybe he just realized, or, like, did she wake up at any point and he talked to her? Like, I'm not really sure, but, like, I don't know. I guess, was she completely unconscious when they showed up?
I thought she was, because they thought she was dead.
Yeah, I don't really know how he would know.
Anyway, the whole, like, I called and he didn't come, she was referring to the sun god. Like, she tried to call the firepower and it wouldn't come.
Which is interesting.
And, yeah. So, and Raihn sort of admits that, like, he knew especially that it would happen eventually. That, like, apparently, like, it hurt Misha physically to use that power. Like, every time she used it, it physically hurt her. Mm-hmm. And that eventually the god of the sun would stop letting her use that power because he wouldn't want a child of Nyaxia to draw on his power.
Yeah.
So, and I feel like putting her in this arena with this spectacle sort of put her, like, front and center. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, so, you know, if this is a tribute to the goddess, I think we can safely assume that other gods are probably watching from wherever they are. So he probably didn't notice before when she was just out in the world. and then seeing her, a vampire, use his power in the arena, he's probably like, no thank you.
Well, and we also don't know if Nyaxia is, like, somehow blocking other magic, too. That could be a thing. Although she has used it already in the Moon Palace, so, like, yeah. It's unfortunate.
Yeah. And then he sort of tells her a little bit about Misha's background, that she was actually a priestess of Atraxis before she was turned, and she was from this town called Pachnai, or Pachnai. I don't know how to pronounce it. There's a CH in the middle. And she actually came here as a missionary to preach to, I'm assuming, vampires. Which is a terrible decision.
Yeah, I don't get it.
Yeah.
But it does make you wonder, did she have the power before? Like, did she use...
I think she did.
Yeah. So I guess humans can just use magic.
Yeah. So she was turned, and they said whoever turned her did it hoping for a slave for eternity if she survived.
Interesting.
But apparently while she was turning, she was, like, really sick. So her, I don't know what to call it, her turner, because they don't really have, like, they don't call them sires or anything like that.
Yeah.
I don't think it holds the same sort of, in other vampire books when we read it, and it's like when somebody turns you, like, you become, like, family almost. I don't know if it has that same sort of, like, respect and reverence in this book.
Yeah, it's hard to tell, because I guess they're the only ones we've really met that we've even heard of being changed. And although she does remind me of Alice Cullen in Twilight, because it's the same, it's like a similar kind of story, but that's not overly helpful, just...
No. Anyway, yeah, so whoever turned her was waiting and got bored because she was so sick, and so just abandoned her. And apparently, like, she had no idea what he was doing when he turned her. She didn't realize that that's what he was doing. And, like, they have no idea who he actually is, but she won't even tell Raihn, like, what house she's in. So, like, we don't know if she's House of Night, House of Shadow, or House of Blood.
Which is interesting. Like, why wouldn't she? Why wouldn't she? Do you find out in the next book?
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah. It's hard to...
Yeah. And so, like, I guess at this point in the book, my question was, like, does she have wings? And I guess we could say the answer is no, because it doesn't seem like she has them out ever.
Yeah.
Now, whether that means she doesn't have them is not, like, she might just not ever use them because she doesn't want to reveal what house she's in if she has wings.
Yeah, but you'd think that at some point in her entire life she would have been on safe and had, like, hauled them out. So it's like she's not using them to the point that, like, if she does have them, it's detrimental to her livelihood. Because, like, if she had wings, wouldn't she have just, like, whacked her wings out and jumped out the window, like, during this attack?
Think. Yeah.
So it's interesting. All interesting.
Yeah. So Raihn is, like, unhappy because he said that, like, the magic that she was using was sort of her final hold on her humanity. And it seems like vampires don't care and that they have no humanity. And Oraya finally realizes that, like, she's asking Nyaxia to turn her if she wins. She is giving something up, and she never realized it before. So she's starting to see that, like, maybe changing isn't in her best interest.
Yeah.
So she finishes stitching him up, and it's at this point that, like, he notices the bandage on her wrist, and he gets really intense and asks her what happened, and she lies to him and tells him it was an injury from the fire. So he doesn't believe her, but he doesn't push it any further.
But I'm like, I need him to flip a table. I need him to lose his shit. I need it.
Yeah, we need him to get upset on her behalf.
Yes. Which, like, is so silly, but I need it.
Yeah. So, she just gives him some pills and to help with the pain and sort of apologizes for what Vincent and his guards did to him. And he asks her at this point, like, if she wants to find a new ally. Because people have left partners behind because of the attack, and, like, some people are injured. So it would be easy for her to find someone new, but she refuses. She's like, we're in this together.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
Yeah, I like that.
She's connecting. That night, Raihn takes Misha out. He says that he has some friends that are going to take care of her outside of the city and make sure she gets better. So they say goodbye, and Misha tells Oraya to watch over Raihn, that he looks tough, but he needs someone, and he likes her. Which is cute. I like it. So they are summoned for the next trial very shortly after that. And Oraya notices that the other Rishon also seem injured, but not as injured as Raihn. Like, she's looking around at all of them and noticing, like, their winces and how they're holding themselves. And she can tell that their injuries don't seem as extensive as Raihn's.
Mm-hmm.
And she's sort of wondering if he was tortured extra because he's connected to her. Which is like, oh, girl. Like, that's something.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually think that she is very calculating and smart. Like, making connections like that. Like, I don't actually know if this is true, because it doesn't really get into it. But the fact that she is thinking about that, I appreciate.
Yeah.
Anyway, so acolytes enter the room and offer goblets to each set of allies, and they all drink. And they're knocked out. And this part was weird. So when Oraya wakes up, there's a man in the room with her, and she doesn't recognize, but it fills her with terror. And I was thinking, like, maybe that's somebody who's attacked her as a child, maybe. It was really unclear, and it's never discussed again.
Yeah, that is odd.
So it's almost like a waking dream.
Yeah. I don't really get it. But I think this is my favorite trial.
Yeah, this is a cool one. Actually, I think the next one is my favorite one.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, so there's like a man in the room, fills her with terror just looking at his face, but then that face morphs into her former lover's face, and I'm assuming that that's the lonely turned boy that we keep getting snippets about in the interludes. Mm-hmm. So like, it's weird that I'm calling it like a waking dream, because she does say that she wakes up, but then there's like, after she's like terrified at this like morphing face that's scaring her, there's like a break in the chapter.
Yeah.
And then she's freaking out, and it's like pitch black, and she says she feels like there are two worlds colliding, and she hears in her mind somebody saying like, Oraya, calm the fuck down.
Yeah.
So it's that's why I'm describing it as like, I don't know if it was a vision or some sort of a dream where she thought she was awake but she wasn't. I don't know. But she realizes, like, somebody saying, Oraya, calm the fuck down, it's Raihn speaking to her inside her head. And they're like, oh, that potion was like a mind bonding potion. And like, that's some heavy duty magic. And it's a really interesting phenomenon that this potion has done, because not only can they speak into each other's minds, but they can also feel each other's emotions. So they can feel the fear and anxiety, and also but keep it separate. Like, she understands what is her emotion versus what's his emotion. So I don't know. I really like it.
Yeah, me too.
So they're in two separate cells, I think. It's what it seems like. It's like they're in two cells, separated by bars, I think, is what it seems like.
Yeah. I kind of imagine it like mirror worlds. Like, there's a wall between them. But, I guess it's... I kind of thought that it wasn't, that they couldn't see each other. They only know because they can see...
Oh, I thought they could see each other as well.
I'm not sure.
But anyway,
I didn't read as clearly because I wasn't taking notes.
Yeah. So they're together but separated. They can't interact with each other. So she finds an escape hatch immediately, and she has to reach really up high, and it's a little trigger thing. And I'm like, how does she know that that's there?
Don't know.
It would not be it's pitch black. She can't see. So, and she's just feeling around the wall, and then she stands up on her tiptoes and touches this little trigger way up high. And I'm like,
yeah,
how did you know that?
Smart.
Anyway, so she sort of I guess mind he also opens his hatch, so they escape. And she says that it's not as dark in the halls, but there's complete carnage. There are demon cats ripping each other apart. And she sees that, it past the hallways, it's still an arena. And people are watching and cheering. And there are these two golden archways far apart. But, like you said, it's mirror worlds. So her and Raihn are not together. They're separate. And the two golden archways, the assumption is that they each have to get to one. There's one in each of their little sections. So doors start to open on the other cells, and contestants are coming out. And some of them are, grabbing their heads they're going crazy. And they say that it's they can't handle the weight of the other minds, because some of them are in groups of 4, which means that one person is carrying their own mind plus 3 others. And that's a lot to carry. Yeah. So, they're, stumbling around with the weight of the minds, stumbling right into the demon cat's claws. And then the demon cats are like, nom, 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 nom.
Yeah. You kind of would assume that they would, maybe just not, come out of their cage until they had their minds figured out. I don't know.
Yeah, you would think.
But, shit happens.
Anyway, so they start fighting their way across the arena, and they find a rhythm, and they sort of get right away the true, reason behind the mind potion. So a Shadowborn attacks Oraya and slices her arm, but Oraya looks and she's like, oh, there's nothing there. But then she looks over and she sees that it's actually Raihn that is hurt. Mm-hmm. So she realizes that, if you kill one of them, you're actually hurting or killing the other one.
Yeah.
So, realizing this is very helpful to their cause, I'll say.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So they manage to, make it through the arena and, fight their way through the arena and get to the wall they have to climb to get up to the arches. And only 11, so we've said before, only half of the contestants survive this trial. So only 11, I guess there's 22 of them fighting. So only 11 of them can make it through the arches. So they have to hurry. But as they're climbing, Oraya feels excruciating pain in her back. And she looks over and sees that Angelica is fighting Raihn on the wall. And he is telling her, keep going, it's fine, he can handle her. She knows that in his state, like his injured state, he cannot. So
well, she's also she knows what he's really thinking too, because it's
Yeah.
not just
Anyway, so she's like, oh no you don't, but she also knows that, like, one, she can't get to Angelica, and two, she needs to hurt Angelica. So she goes to find Angelica's partner Ivan and starts to fight him. So the issue is that he is quite the proficient blood magic user, and she has to sort of like fight through that. And the four of them are just like locked in these two battles, and Oraya actually gets distracted by seeing somebody reach the gate.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a bit, maybe I also didn't read it as well as I should have, but so I think the way it seems is like each side has two gates.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a good gate and a bad gate, and you have to figure out which gate is the good one and which is the bad one.
Yeah.
So she's trying to watch the person figure out which gate do I go through.
Yes.
And so obviously Ivan takes that opportunity to stab her in the side, and then uses his blood magic to force her into this group of waiting demon cats.
Yeah. Not great.
Yeah.
So, this isn't really... It is related, but not super related.
Okay.
Do you think if you're like the 12th person and you don't make it through, they just leave you here until you get killed by these demons? Or could you potentially live through this task if you're not one of the 11?
I don't know.
Right? Because, like, we know what happens. We do find out, like, everybody else dies. But I wonder if...
Yeah, like, if you're like the 12th person to reach the gate and you can't go through, but you're alive, I wonder what they do to you.
Yeah, like, I kind of feel like they wouldn't just take you out of this thing, but, like, what if you kill everybody else?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I know what you mean, and I agree with you. I don't know what would happen.
Me neither. Interesting things.
Yeah. So she's like, the beasts are like coming down on her, and one like grabs her leg, and she can't move because Ivan's magic is like preventing her muscles from moving. And Raihn is like yelling in her head to hold on and to fight, and that he's coming back for her, which I don't understand, because how is he going to come back for her if they're in separate arenas?
Yeah. I don't know. Do you think that the demons are like are connected to a demon on both
Maybe.
sides?
Maybe.
I don't. That seems insane. Like, is he just gonna kill every single? Maybe he will.
Maybe.
But you know.
Yeah. Anyway, so like he's telling her to hold on to fight, that he's gonna come back for her, but she is like totally giving up, and she's like, I'm about to die because there are so many demons just crawling all over her. And I'm like, they're crawling all over you and not attacking yet? Like, what's happening?
Yeah, it's odd.
So Raihn yells to like use her magic, and she's like, I can't, because I'm trying to relax and not be scared, because that's what Vincent has kept telling her to do, like focus. But Raihn is like, use the fear. It's like, use the force, but use the fear. And that's the key. And he was like, I'm with you like 100%. So then she starts to let herself think of things that like scare her / make her angry. So like she lets herself think of the boy that she keeps trying to forget that gave her the scar on her neck. She thinks of her parents that died for nothing. She thinks of the little girl that from the second trial that, you know, had everything taken from her. She thinks of herself being left alone in like a ruined city. And she lets her fear become rage, and she lets her rage become power. And she realizes that she's not going to let herself die here. And she just lets her fury explode. And it explains it as like it's coming out of her mouth and her eyes and her fingers and her hair, and like all the way up to the sky and to Nyaxia herself. And, like, she says she even feels Nyaxia reach back. And it's like she's releasing night fire that consumes everything. And it allows her to just get up and walk across the arena and up the wall. And she just doesn't stop until she's at the gate. And then she sees Raihn across at the top of the other wall. And, like, he's on his knees staring up at her like she's a goddess. And, like, he's in awe of her. And then all of a sudden he's up and across the space between them. Oh, I understand what happened. And then he hugs her, like, so tight that he lifts her off the ground. So, like, it's really the first time she has let somebody get that close.
Yes.
Like, even Vincent doesn't really hug her.
No, we kind of said that, I think, last week in a sad thing.
Yeah. So, anyway. So, I think what happened is there's not 2 gates in each section. There's just 2 gates total. So they're separated in the arena until they get up to the gates, and then they can converge and be a team.
Oh, yes. That makes sense.
So yeah, so, like, he's, like, lifted her off the ground, and she's, like, allowing herself to hug him and nuzzle in. And, like I said, she has never let a vampire get that close before. Mm-hmm. So he sets her down, and she finds Vincent in the crowd. And he is, like, clutching his heart like he was scared shitless. And in my head, I'm like, was it because of her near-death experience? I'm sure partly it was. Or is it also because she just hugged a vampire in a very public forum? And a Rishon one at that. And he is always, like, you know, drilled into her, don't.
Yeah. I don't think it's that. I think it's literally because she was going to die. I don't think he realizes that they have an actual connection. I think he's just like, that's what you do with allies.
Anyway, so Vincent is, like, decently far away, so she can't really see, but she thinks she sees a tear running down her cheek before her and Raihn enter the right gate and go back to the palace. So we have an interlude now that talks of Oraya falling in love with the lonely boy that was turned. And I guess, like, you know, it starts with just whispers and then meetings, and eventually she goes to his room and they're going to have sex. And during sex, she says it starts off, like, loving and pleasurable, but bloodlust takes over him and he bites her. And she is so terrified. So she hits him over the head with a candelabra, and then just grabs her clothes and runs to Vincent's room and just tells him everything about their relationship. Yay. And, like, I mean, I think she put her clothes back on before she got to his room.
Well, yes.
But can you...
I can't.
It's just, like, it's unfortunate, but obviously it's the only person she had to talk to. So what else is she going to do?
Yeah.
And I think this is a huge source of her mistrust of vampires and her assumption that they all have bloodlust, right? Like, that's why she was so nervous about Raihn going into the bar with vampires, is, like, she is under the assumption that that boy loved her, but he still couldn't control himself. So what's to stop anybody else?
Yeah, I don't think she's wrong. Like, I guess it happens later this week, but I think, like, every vampire can have bloodlust. It's just she doesn't really understand that in a normal situation, and, like, I guess if the vampire has practiced at restraint and stuff, like,
yeah.
But I think that they all do get bloodlusty.
I think they can if they've been starved, but, like, this kid was living in a castle. Like, there's no lack of food.
Yeah.
So there's no reason for him to be in a true bloodlust situation.
No, but he is super young, and it does make me, like, we get stuff about a bite a little later, but you do kind of get that, like, being horny and drinking blood and, like, it's all kind of interconnected. So, like, I get why it happened. I just think that he's just a baby.
Oh yeah, could be. Yeah, you're probably right. Anyway, so back to present day. Obviously, there's only 11 competitors left. The minister comes and tells them that there's going to be a great feast to celebrate their victory. So I guess because we're at the halfway point, they're going to celebrate. Mm-hmm. But they're going to celebrate actually at the church, not at the Moon Palace. So they go back to their apartment. And, like, this is actually one of the first times she's not, like, grievously injured after a trial. But, like, so, like you said in week 1, I think, is that, like, a lot of people after the Half Moon trial will, like, kill their allies. Mm-hmm. And so she's sort of on edge. She doesn't really know how to act now because technically they don't need to be allies anymore. But she knows that his concern for her is genuine. Like, because she felt it when they were mind linked. So, like, she knows that he not has feelings for her in a romantic way, but, like, cares for her and for her well-being. She knows that that's not faked. So she doesn't really know where they stand. Like, she doesn't know if he's still going to try and kill her. Like he said he would when he first made the approach about being allies. One of his reasons was she'll be easy to kill after. So, like, she doesn't really know, like, if he's gonna do that.
Yeah.
But the Moon Palace is sort of like, again, it's sort of, do you know what it reminds me of? The cabin in A Court of Mist and Fury. Like, it anticipates your needs and can give you whatever you want.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like that right now. So
does the cabin do that?
In A Court of Mist and Fury, it does.
I don't remember.
Oh.
I thought that... Oh, yeah, she wanted to bat... Okay, yes. I do kind of remember that now.
Yeah, so, like, they have to get ready for this big feast. Like, it's going to be a huge party. So she goes into her bathroom, and there are, like, healing potions laid out for her, like a warm bath, and, like, there are hair brushes for her to use, and there's, like, a dress laid out for her to wear. It's funny because she doesn't want to wear it because it's, like, it's a bright color that she doesn't want to wear, and she's never done that before, and she wants to go in her, like, fighting leathers. Mm-hmm. But she looks around her room, and the Moon Palace got rid of every other article of clothing she owns.
Which is just
so funny. She literally has no choice but to either wear that dress or go naked. So she's like, well, shit.
Guess I'm wearing this dress now.
Yeah. So she puts it on, and she realizes that it was actually the vibrant violet purple dress that Ilana had gotten for her and suggested she wear in the first week.
Yeah.
And she just talks about how she feels, like, really naked and exposed because she never wore anything to stand out before. But she decides that fuck it, she's gonna do it for Ilana. And she's been carrying around that piece of purple fabric that she took off Ilana's body, and it's kind of like, I guess, a scarf, maybe. Mm-hmm. So it was, like, stained with blood and, like, scorched at the ends, but she still ties it around her throat, and she's sort of using it as a message, like, look at all this finery, but, like, this person is dead.
Yeah.
Which I love. I love that she's, like, being a bit defiant here. So she purposely shows up to the feast late after the vampires have eaten because she doesn't want to be considered a meal.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. But she starts to wonder, like, where all the blood comes from. And she's a bit disgusted by it. Because, like, she knows that there's a lot of human blood. Like, where is the human blood coming from?
It's just
like,
interesting that this is, like, the first time that she's actually thinking
right?
about it.
Yeah. And, like, again, we said that they tend to have a variety of blood available. But, like, if it's all in these big, like, punch bowls, and there's, like, a punch bowl full of human blood, like,
yeah.
What are they gonna do? Just hold their wrist over it? Like, you would make, like, a few drops, maybe, unless you were bled dry, right? So, like, people must be
actually giving blood type situation. Like, if they have, like, a full-on IV set up to, like, a bunch of different people. But, yeah, there's,
I think it's naive of her to have not thought of this before.
Oh, yeah. For sure.
Anyway, so she runs into Vincent, and his first thing that he says to her is, like, you shouldn't be wearing that dress. But
she didn't have a choice.
Yeah. But she doesn't actually bring that up. She doesn't say, like, it was literally this or nothing.
Yeah. Which I would. I would like, what the fuck do you want me to do? The house gave me this. I didn't have a choice.
She's curt with him. And she still hasn't really forgiven him for Raihn's back.
Fair.
So he asks her to dance. And so they do dance. And she mentions Raihn and says, like, what happened to not breaking him? And this is his reaction that I dislike. All he said about it was, he doesn't look broken and he fought well enough, so I guess I held up, like, I did what I promised I'd do.
Yeah.
So because he did a decent job fighting, it meant that he's not broken.
Not a piece of shit.
And I don't think that's good enough.
No, I agree.
Right? But he adds on this caveat that, like, he's a king during wartime, so, like, certain things need to be done.
That's good enough, I guess.
Like, that seems to be his answer for a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he very much there's a very huge, like, break between who he is as a father versus who he is as a king.
Yeah.
So they dance a bit more and discuss her childhood a bit, like talking about how he flew with her for the first time and how he only took her flying once and never again. And she asked him about it, like, why didn't you take me flying anymore? And he said it was because he didn't want her to think she could and jump out a window and die.
Like, I guess.
Yeah. So, like, he's constantly worried about protecting her. And I will say that this point is funny in book 2.
Okay.
But, like, so he's always protecting her. But he also tells her that she has been the greatest accomplishment of his life. And he hopes she knows how much he ... Like, we assume loves her, but he doesn't actually say the words.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is sort of what tears me up, is because, like, he isn't a good leader. Like, he isn't a great king because he is allowing humans to be hurt, and he's sort of letting the status quo happen.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, he's brutal and cruel, but at the same time, he does love her. And, like, he's genuine about that. So, like, I'm really torn in how I feel about Vincent.
Yeah.
Because as much as he's a piece of shit, he genuinely does love her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I find it so hard to, like, reconcile my feelings for him. And if I find it hard to reconcile my feelings for him, imagine how she feels.
Yeah. I'm kind of happy that the end of the book ends the way it does, because I was really worried it wouldn't, and that this would be, like, it would all be a bigger problem in the next book. Yeah. And, like, sure, there's still going to be emotional problems about it, but I thought there would be, like, you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. We'll talk about it when we get there.
Right. Anyway, so, like, she is sort of flabbergasted because he has never been so affectionate with her before.
I love the word flabbergasted. Sorry.
It's fine. I didn't know what other word to use. Like,
I loved it. It was perfect. My favorite.
Anyway, so yeah, so it tears her up a little bit because she sort of feels the same. Like, she's having trouble reconciling his, like, duty as a king, and yet she knows that he loves her and has, and wants to do right by her. Mm-hmm. So she sees Raihn in a black silk jacket with a purple sash, and it matches her dress. So, like, I'm like, ooh, the Moon Palace is, like, purposely making them match? Like, ooh.
And the Moon Palace is controlled by Nyaxia. So, like, this is everything that happens in this entire book, I'm convinced, was, like, her plan all along. I don't know what happens in the second book, obviously, though, but I'm like, she's behind all of it.
But, like, yeah, I can see that. But, like, I wonder if all the other allies were dressed, like, have some form of matching thing.
I don't know, but I do doubt it based on nothing. So.
Just based on what we want it to be?
Oh, yeah, because I do feel like some of the other allies probably, like, have already turned on each other.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
But, obviously, I don't know that for sure. That's just my assumption.
Yeah. So she goes out, she, like, sees him go out onto, like, a balcony or out to the gardens of the church. So she goes out to find him. And she actually sees Angelica and Ivan, the bloodborne vampires, talking to a third guy. And she recognizes this guy as the one that gave her the cigarettes after the first trial and told her that, like, he bet on her and she, like, did a good job.
Yeah.
And she finally sees that he is also bloodborne. I don't know how she didn't see that first. And he comes over to talk to her, and he introduces himself as Septimus. And he's of the
Fun
House
name.
of Blood. I like it.
Mm-hmm.
And she immediately doesn't like him. She,
Even
like,
though...
gets a... Yeah. But she gets a weird vibe from him. So, like, she's like... she doesn't trust him and doesn't want him to get close to her. Mm-hmm. And she sort of feels like he's, like, playing with her. So she's trying to, like, back up because she's like, shit, I'm in a dark garden with this, like, creepazoid.
Yeah.
And so she's trying to sort of, like, figure out a way to escape without, like, turning her back to him. When Raihn approaches and saves the day. And it's funny, he actually says, oh, there you are, I've been looking for you, which is totally an ACOTAR, like, reference.
I know. I love it.
Yeah. I love it so much. So the two men sort of already seem like they know each other in their little conversation that they have. And Septimus actually congratulates Raihn and asks who he should bet on in the next trial, considering he can't bet on them as a pair. And he then thinks that a lot of people are going to assume that it'll be easy for Raihn to kill her. Mm-hmm. But Nasanyan has a good chance. And then he corrects himself that her name is Oraya, isn't it? And that makes Raihn, like, really stiff and tense, and he excuses them to, like, walk away. So, like, I was sort of at first thinking, oh my god, could, like, she actually not be Oraya, and could she be someone else named Nasanyan, and he actually knows the truth about her, and, like, that's where my mind went when I read that part. I was like, oh my god, like, maybe she's descended from somebody else, and her true name is Nasanyan, and, like, Raihn knows, and he's here to, like, open that up in her, and, like, all this stuff.
Or even, like, I kind of thought maybe, reincarnation or something, you know?
Oh, yeah.
It could have been something like that. I really didn't think it was just going to be pettiness.
Yeah.
The answer is petty.
Yeah. Yes, that is, the answer is petty. Yeah, correct. So Raihn tells Oraya that Septimus is one of the princes of the House of Blood, and they're super power hungry, and like that she should try and keep her distance from him. Because 2,000 years ago, the House of Blood was actually Nyaxia's favorite, but they turned against her because of the power she gave them. So I guess she gave each house a different power, and I guess the House of Blood were not happy with their ability, like with the power they have. They wanted one of the other ones. So I guess because they turned on her and complained, she cursed them.
Yeah.
So they all have the blood curse now. So they all die prematurely. They all get that crazy. They all eventually go insane. And they say that, like, even now, if one of them ever wins the Kajari, she is hesitant to bestow a gift. Like, she doesn't want to give them anything.
Yeah.
So her and Raihn sort of stare at each other for a minute, and he tells her she looks nice. And her first thing that she says to him is, "Who's Nasanyan?" And it's like, way to break the mood, girl.
Yeah.
But he just says that, like, it's an old friend of his. And he warns Oraya to be careful around Septimus because he's dangerous. And she says back that Raihn is dangerous too. And he answers with, "Not with you." Oh, it's so cute. I love it. I love it so much. Because, like, he actually is dangerous, but he's saying he's not gonna hurt her. It's so cute.
It is cute.
Anyway, so he asks if she would rather go somewhere fun. And she's like, hell yes, I don't want to be here anymore. And they end up on a rooftop, I assume in the human district, drinking gross beer.
Yeah.
And, like, there's a hell of a lot of sexual tension. Like, each of them are watching the other's body parts as they move. Like, she is watching, like, him drink and seeing, like, the line of his throat, and, like, he lifts an arm and she sees, like, the chiseled muscle of his arm, and, like, she, like, adjusts her leg, and, like, he looks at her legs. It's very, like, they're just watching each other's body parts, so there's a ton of sexual tension. And, yeah, so he asks about the scarf she's wearing, and he sees, like, and can smell that there's blood on it. And she tells him that it was her friend Ilana's, and he understands, like, that she's the person that died in the Moon Palace. And they have, like, a cute moment, and he asks her what she would ask Nyaxia for if she wins. And she doesn't really give him an answer, but I guess her silence means, like, he understands that she's gonna ask to be turned. And he says he doesn't understand why. And she tells him that she can't do anything or change anything while she worries about being prey. Because right now, like, she's super vulnerable and she doesn't like it. So she tells him that. She's like, right now I can't make any changes. I can't help anybody. I can't do anything because I'm constantly in fight or flight mode. And his response is adorable. He says he's seen so many injustices in his 200 years. It's more like 300 years, but whatever. But one of the biggest injustices he's ever seen is that somebody has convinced her she needs to be anything other than exactly what she already is.
Sin.
It's so cute. It's like he likes her for being human.
I know.
She sort of is realizing at this moment that she's gonna have to kill him to win, but she doesn't know if she can. So they walk back to the Moon Palace, but before they go inside, he starts acting weird. And she sort of realizes that, like, them going back in the Moon Palace means that they can start killing each other. And she hates that.
Yeah.
So he's like, oh, my back hurts because I'm still in pain. So like, can you take my sword and lean it against the wall for me for a second? And then he walks away from it. And then he sort of undoes his shirt and tells her that he was injured in the trial and to have a look at it for him. So, like, he's sort of opening and, like, making his heart available for her to kill him. So, like, she understands that this is what he's doing, that he's offering himself up for her to kill him.
Yeah.
And she comes up close to him to, like, check out the injury. And, like, she touches his chest. And, like, they have this, like, heated moment where he rubs his thumb across her lips and asks if she's going to kill him. And her answer is, not tonight. And his response to that is that she might destroy him anyway.
I love it.
I do too.
I love it so much.
But nothing happens. He backs off and they agree to go inside. So there's nothing happens. So, but I guess they've sort of, they have an uneasy truce now. Not uneasy, an easier truce now. Like, they're going to stay, I think they're going to stay allies.
Yeah. So they go back inside the Moon Palace. They decided not to kill each other tonight. And Raihn is like, we should just stay together in our same room for safety. Mm-hmm. So they decide to do that. And then the first night that they're together, they literally just like sit in the living room area and talk. Like, I don't even think they talk that much, but they like fall asleep in the same room together, which is like more vulnerable than they were even before they were allies. Not before they were allies, but before when they were allies for the middle trial. The next day, she goes out, I guess, into the hallway, and his bedroom door is cracked open, and she just sees him sleeping. And in her head, Vincent's voice says, it's perfect timing. And she thinks of, like, how she would kill him. So she's like, she'd open the blinds so that he'd be distracted by the sun, and she'd crawl over his beautiful naked body and plunge her sword into his chest, and then the sheets would be soaked. And I was like, oh my god.
Soaked with what?
The sexual, like, thoughts here are wild.
But, like, also the fact that she's intertwining killing him with sexual thoughts.
Yeah. Because, like, the whole point is, like, they'd be soaked with his blood, but it's, like, that's still a weird way to say it.
Yeah.
And then she just is imagining, like, how hard he would be between her legs. Like, his body, not just his dick. And she's, like, visualizing this whole thing. And in her head, before she can stab him, he would wake up and touch her thighs, and then her waist, and then her breasts. And he asks her if she's going to kill him. And then she wakes up. So this was all a dream. And you're like, God damn it. But when she leaves her room, she looks and his door is open the same way it was in her dream. And she doesn't kill him or have sex with him. She just walks away. God damn.
That's nice of her.
Yes. Well, it's not nice of her to me. I want them to have sex.
Yes.
So I guess the next, I keep calling it morning and night, but it's the opposite because they're nocturnal, but you know what I mean. So the next morning, Raihn is cooking stew, and he gives her a taste of it, and she is speechless, and, like, she has never tasted anything so delicious. But he says that this isn't how he imagined making her come for the first time. And there is so much sexual tension there, because, like, he's said so much with that sentence. Like, obviously he's imagined it before and in multiple ways, so that's interesting. But there's also an interesting bit about, like, she's never really eaten good food because vampires don't taste as well once they're older. So, like, why would they care what it tastes like? So she usually has shitty food and he makes really good food. So it's just kind of an interesting tidbit. But he also tells her that he's bringing this to Misha, and she asks to go with him. So, Raihn obviously has to fly them there, and his back is still not, like, fully healed, but he's, like, okay to fly now, so that's good. But they fly for hours, and Raihn can tell that she loves flying, and it's pretty unusual for, like, especially humans, I guess, or anybody that can't fly to, like, immediately love it. And it just makes me want her to have wings so bad. That's my hope for her future, is she gets wings. They end up going to, like, a farmstead, which is, like, far away from any towns or anything. And when they land, a man opens the door, and he's very happy to see Raihn, but not so happy to see Oraya. So they go inside, and there's a woman there too, and Raihn introduces them as Carissa and Keturah, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then he brings Oraya upstairs to see Misha. And obviously, we love Misha. She's super excited to see them. She tells them about her time there and, like, all the animals, and she asks about the Half Moon trial, and Raihn tells her about Oraya using her power and everything. And eventually, obviously, they need to leave because they need to get back before sunrise. And Raihn, like, goes downstairs, but Misha, like, tells Oraya to stay back for a second. Yep. And, like, tells her to stay safe. And she says that, like, coming to see her means a lot to her. And that it means a lot to him, too. And then they shake hands because, like, Oraya's not into hugging vampires. So, like, this is, like, her compromise, I'll say. So Oraya leaves then, and she walks downstairs, and she can hear them talking below, so she just kind of eavesdrops for a bit, and she hears Keturah say that she, so they're obviously talking about her, shouldn't be here, and Raihn says she's a friend, but then Keturah says, like, don't you know what he is doing out there now? So obviously they're talking about Vincent, and calls her Vincent's human whore. And Raihn immediately shuts her down with, like, command in his voice, and she actually apologizes for saying it. So there's, like, a weird dynamic here. Like, obviously he has some power. She comes down then, and they leave, and he knows that she's heard all that. And she says, like, she can't get upset about people calling her names like that because they do it all the time. And, like, even Raihn did it before, so.
Yeah.
But he says Keturah's wife is actually in Selene, and she's scared for her. And, like, that is where it's all coming from. Like, that's, which is fair. She tells him then that, like, she's actually from Selene, and that's where she was found, and she plans to go back there once all of this is over. And she asks him then, like, who those people are, and he says friends, but she kind of looks at him, and she's like, you didn't act like you act around friends. Like, you went in and gave Misha a giant hug when you saw her. Like, that's not how you acted around those people. So he says colleagues. And she asks if he, like, commanded them, and he says yes, long ago, and they were all guards of a sort. So that's interesting, and not a lie. He then tells her he doesn't see her like that anymore. He doesn't see her as, like, Vincent's whore anymore or anything. He actually called her Vincent's pet. So, I guess that's not as bad. It's still... He did kind of ask if they were having sex, though. It's just not cool. But anyway, she kind of deflects, but, like, in her head, it does mean a lot that, like, he actually sees her as a person now. So the next night, the doors to the Moon Palace are locked. So Oraya tries to leave, but she can't get out. So she goes back to their suite, and then Raihn goes and gets some fruit and bread and one glass of blood, and they're like, shit, like, obviously the house, Nyaxia, whoever, is intending to starve them all before the next trial. But Raihn says he has enough blood. He does say that some of the blood was destroyed in the fire, but he still has, like, some in the room because they had been hoarding it before.
Yeah.
Oraya kind of thinks, like, the next trial could be 1 to 3 weeks away. Like, it's not as certain as the others when this one will take place, which is unfortunate. So they don't really know how long this is going to be. The next day, there's nothing in the feast hall at all, so they really are trying to starve them. And a desperate vampire, like, tries to fly out a window that's higher up, and there's, like, a barrier. So, like, he breaks the window, he goes out, but then he's covered in, like, thousands of tiny cuts because there's, like, a magical barrier stopping them from going out.
Right.
So they know that he's gonna die. Like, that's just... We needed somebody to test it out, or other people would try it. Time starts passing, and vampires start pacing outside their door because Oraya is the only source of blood in this place, so they're going for her. But inside, they kind of have, like, a bit of a normal life. Raihn and Oraya spend their days training and then practicing her magic, and everything feels kind of normal, even though it's, like, not.
Yeah.
But they have their nice little moments. Each night, Raihn, like, stands in the window and watches the sun until it starts to leave burn marks on his skin. So one night /day, yeah, while he's sleeping, Oraya grabs a mirror from her room and positions it perfectly so that the angle in the hallway will protect him from the sun. But if he looks at the mirror, it'll reflect outside so that, like, he can watch it.
Yeah.
So then, like, the next night when the sun is starting to come up, she shows him it, and then he watches the sunrise and sunset every day and, like, super appreciates it, and it's really sweet.
It is really cute.
So we get to the 3rd week now, and Raihn is tense, and she kind of realizes that he is out of blood, and he tells her he's fine, but she can tell that he isn't. And she offers to leave, but he asks why. And he tells her that she is safe with him and doesn't have to worry about it. But she knows, like, he won't be able to control it at some point. Like, obviously, he's out of blood completely. At some point, he's gonna snap, and she's the only source.
Yeah.
He asks if after everything she's still afraid. And she just says, like... No, and he says, like, he's not an animal. And I think he has a hard time coming to terms with, or has had a hard time coming to terms with the fact that he is a vampire. And, like, obviously most of the time he isn't starving himself, so he doesn't have this issue. Because he used to be human, too. So he's, like, he's just having a hard time with it all.
But, like, I feel bad because I sort of see where they're both coming from. Like, she has seen vampires in bloodlust, so she sort of gets it, that it's not something that he can control. However, I do think that she has been taught to believe that vampires have literally no self-control, which I don't believe is the case. Like, they do have the ability to control themselves to a certain extent, and I think she doesn't see that aspect. But I think you're right. Like, he overcompensates the other way. He doesn't want to admit that at some point he might not have the control.
Yeah. And, like, that's kind of what she says. Because, like, she even, like, she has felt safe with him. And she didn't think that this would happen. But this is a different situation completely. Like, with no blood left, obviously at some point, he would snap. Like, I think he's kind of taken it a bit too personally. And, like, I think even later he does admit that. But, like, it's obviously a hard situation. You don't want to think that you're going to be in that type of situation where you would hurt somebody that you don't want to. So, yeah. But, like, she's seen that the vampires here that have no blood are, like, literally just pacing outside of her door trying to get to her. So, like, obviously, once you get that far gone, you're just screwed.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's kind of what she says back. And, like, while they're kind of arguing a bit about it, her heart rate quickens and she sees him react to it. So she's like, even if he believes he wouldn't, she can't risk him attacking her. So she even thinks, like, she wishes they could spend the rest of their lives, and she says the rest of their lives, which is like, she doesn't even say like the rest of the trials. She says she wishes she could spend the rest of their lives making a home together in this apartment. And I was just like, that's a statement.
It's a big leap. It's a big leap. Yeah.
And I kind of love it.
Yeah.
She even kind of thinks to herself, like, she wonders if she could offer to feed him, but she knows it's stupid, and, like, if he got a taste, maybe he would just drain her, because, like, that's... Yeah. She also doesn't believe he has self-control, or any vampire has self-control there. And, like, obviously there are different levels of self-control, just like there are with humans, of everything. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I don't think she realizes that either. But yeah, so she knows it's stupid to offer that, and it's really hard for both of them, because, like, they know after he leaves now that they're going to be enemies again, which is sad.
Yeah.
So he ends up leaving, and she has to put a dresser back in front of the door, and it's a really sad moment, and she wants to tell him to stay, but she's like, I can't. And she wants to say she'll miss him, but she can't. And you're like, yeah. So that night she dreams of her family. Leeson and Jonah are asleep, and her mother is yelling to turn off the lantern, and she looks outside and the sky is full of wings. So this is a dream, but we're also assuming it's kind of like a flashback. And her mother yells at her to get away from the window, and she wakes up then, and the air makes her vomit, and the ground is super rocky and it's dark, and she knows that she must be in the Crescent trial, but it's not in the Colosseum, which is odd because every other one was. Mm-hmm. And she's like, this isn't Sivernage, which is the, like, main city.
The city, yeah.
Yeah. She doesn't know where they are.
But I think they also did say that, like, this trial is sort of the one that's the most question marky. Like, all the other ones you could sort of say, okay, there's beasts in this one we're going to be allies. I think this one is the one that's sort of like, we have no idea what's going to happen. It could be anything.
Yeah, it's really up in the air.
Yeah.
Well, especially, like, they were like, it could be 1 week away, it could be 3 weeks away. We really know nothing. It is the most, yeah. She hears footsteps then, and someone slams into her, and she attacks back, but the poison in her blades doesn't really deter the attacker, and she kind of wonders if this is, like, the worst bloodlust she's ever seen, because obviously everybody that's there now has been starved for, like, 3+ weeks.
Yeah.
So she's just, like, stabbing at him until he finally staggers and falls away, and then she stabs him in the heart, and then, like, some toxic smoke comes, and, like, I think she, like, kind of starts to run away from it, and it, like, devours his body, and you're like, cool, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
Like, not only are they against each other, but there's this toxic smoke.
A la Hunger Games.
Yeah, exactly. In the distance, she can see vampires attacking deer, and she's kind of relieved because she's like, good, I'm not the only source of blood out here. Like,
yeah.
This is ideal. So she goes to walk away, but then she sees that the vampires that were just feeding kind of look like they aren't in control of their bodies anymore and are just, like, mindlessly attacking each other after just drinking the deer blood. So she kind of puts it together and realizes, like, the deer are poisonous, and if you drink their blood, then you end up, like, frenzied, basically. And, like, what the vampire before her, when it attacked her, it wasn't bloodlust. It was this poisony stuff. Yeah. The only thing she can think is getting to Raihn before he feeds. Because if he feeds, he's fucked.
Yeah.
So it doesn't take her long to find him, and he's feral and uncontrolled because of bloodlust, but he isn't lurching and being, like, moving against his will. Like, he still has his gracefulness and stuff. So, like, she can tell that he hasn't drank yet. She sees him attack a Shadowborn man and kill him, and then he flies off after a deer, and the deer is just, like, running around crazed, and she ends up being able to, like, jump in front of his path and yells at him to stop. And he actually does, which is good. And she's terrified of him, but instead of running away, she runs at him. And he's not really in his right mind, and he gets one strike in to her cheek, but she dodges most of them because obviously they've trained together, and she knows his weaknesses, and she's able to pin him. And he holds her shoulders, and she thinks that he's going to kill her, but she yells that she'll fucking stab him again and to snap out of it. And he just blinks at her, and I'm like, I fucking love her. I love her so much.
Yeah, she's great.
He kind of gets, like, back to himself again, and she tells him that they're in a trial, and the animals are poisoned and making the vampires insane, and they need to get out of here. And she's just, like, spitting all this at him, and he just sees her cheek and asks if he did that, but she just says it doesn't matter, they need to go.
Yeah.
So she lets him up, but she notices that, like, he's really hurt. Like, he got hurt in his battle with the Shadow Man earlier.
Yeah.
And Dawn isn't far off, so she has to, like, help him walk. Like, he has his arm around her shoulder. And they find a cave, and they go, like, deep into the back of the cave, and she makes a fire with her magic, which is good. I'm impressed by her.
She's been practicing.
Yeah, love it. He says that he didn't think he'd see her again, and he thanks her and says that she was right to tell him to leave. He didn't want her to see him that way, and she can tell that, like, he feels a lot of shame for, like, bloodlust and the whole thing, and it's like, it's not really his fault, but obviously you shouldn't kill people, you know, things. Yeah. She tells him he needs to heal, obviously, but he can't hunt in the light because he's already injured and he's already in bloodlust, and, like, if he goes out into the light, he's fucked.
Yeah.
So he asks her to hunt for him, but they don't know if there are any animals that aren't poisoned, and, like, they don't know how to check. So, like, what is she gonna do?
Yeah. We all know where this is headed.
Oh, of course. But
Come on.
Says, like, he wouldn't mind dying here, and it's just, like, so sad
and dramatic.
It's so dramatic. I love him. But he, like, she starts unfastening her leathers, basically, and he looks at her, and she can tell it's with a different kind of hunger because she's taking her clothes off. But he says no, and she says she can't watch him die, and her voice cracks. And he tells her he understands what it means for her to do this, because, like, obviously when she, in the last trial, when she, like, let her fear take over her, part of her fear was the guy that started drinking her blood while they were having sex. Like,
yeah,
he saw some of that through her
bond.
mind. Yeah. She ends up sitting in front of him, and he touches the scar on her neck, and you can just tell that, like, he doesn't want to traumatize her because she's already been traumatized by this before, and it's just, like, he's good people.
Mm-hmm.
She tells him she's not afraid of him, and she straddles him, and he puts his hands on her waist, and it feels perfect to both of them.
Ah!
He takes her knife out then and puts it in her hand and, like, puts it against his chest so that she knows that she's in control. Like, if she gets startled or if it's too much, she can just stab him. he will die. And you're like, this seems a bit intense. Could we, like, maybe put it somewhere else?
Yeah.
Nope.
But I feel like nowhere else would make it as
significant.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, like, it is giving her the control. She is on top of him. Like, she has the knife. Like, yeah. So he pulls them together, and he tells her it might make her feel ... And she says that she knows, and then she thinks to herself, like, vampire venom makes humans pliable, and, like, in a case like this, it could make her feel horny. And you're like, of fucking course it can. Of course.
Yeah. I know. But then she also, it's really funny because then she goes into, like, it's really only if you're already, like, if you already have, like, positive feelings towards the person who's drinking from you. Like, obviously she didn't get that way with the minister because he disgusts her. So,
yeah.
Like, that's not gonna get her. She's not gonna get in the mood with him because she already has an aversion to him. Like, it's really only with people that you, like, she's already attracted to him. So it's gonna, it's gonna enhance that feeling.
Mm-hmm. And, like, I think she also said, like, with the other guy, it was like, it just made her more drowsy, which is a way of being pliable too. Like,
yeah.
So it all does something, but, like, it affects you based on what you're already feeling. So he bites her, and she's immediately affected, like, immediately. And you're like, this isn't the venom.
No.
But I guess, like, some of it could be the venom, but, like, all of her doubts leave her. Her breasts peak. She feels him get hard underneath her, and she, like, rolls her hips on his. They all have clothes on, but she's rolling her hips so that, like,
she's grinding, like, against him. Yeah,
grinding against his hardness. And she ends up moaning because she wants him so badly. He keeps drinking. She drops her knife, and she doesn't want to stop. And she knows, like, most of this is actually just that, like, she wants him. Like, it's not the venom. She just has always wanted him. So they end up, like, moving together, and she ends up coming.
Amazing.
And, like, it's one of those, like, she's so out of it for a while because she's come, and you're like, okay. But when she comes down from it, he's, like, holding her but not drinking her blood anymore, and he's, like, not caging her in because he knows that she could maybe feel claustrophobic if he was. So, like, he's being respectful, I guess. But she wants more. So she kisses him, and she can taste her blood on his lips, and she can taste him, and it's, like, super sexual. She even basically tells him that she wants to have sex, but he says that they need to stop because this isn't her. Like, this is the venom. She isn't in her right mind. But she says she knows they both want it, and he tells her he has a list of what he wants to do with her. And you're like, I want that list. Tell me what it is.
Yes, yeah.
He ends up standing up, and he's much better, and then she tries to get up, but she almost falls over because she's just so, like the blood loss coming, like, there's a lot going on with her. So he catches her, and he tells her to sleep, and he, like, lies down behind her and curls around her, and he says thank you. And he whispers, she's the most stunning thing he has ever seen, as she, like, drifts off to sleep. And you're like, oh my god.
He's so great.
I love it. I love it so much. She wakes up warm and safe in the arms of a wall of a man. Fuck off with a wall of a man. It's not too bad in this situation, though. She doesn't think he's a wall. She's just describing him as a wall of a man. But, like, she doesn't often wake up feeling safe, so this is, like, a big deal for her.
Yeah.
He's already awake, and he looks so much better, and his wounds are mostly healed, which is good. And she knows that he's about to say something about yesterday, so she's just like, nope, not dealing with feelings, fuck that. So she says, like, she says this must be Nyaxia's search for Alaris, so the god of the dead who she ended up marrying. So apparently the other gods promised Alaris that they, like, Nyaxia would be safe. So they lured him out with that promise and then captured him. So she searched the Deadlands for him, but they killed him. And she didn't get to him in time, basically. So that the place they're in now is basically representing the Deadlands. They kind of, like, look out because it's nighttime, so they can leave and go do things. And it's quiet, and the mist is worse now than it was last night. It's starting to, like, block everything, but then it kind of clears a tiny bit, and she can kind of see the ground, and not only does it look dead, but she thinks it looks murdered, which is interesting. Raihn can actually see the end from here, because he has way better eyesight, and he says it's miles away, and they kind of are, like, trying to figure out how they're going to get there, because they can't fly above the smoke, because apparently it pools at the top, so, like, there must be, like, a barrier keeping them in, which makes sense. And Oraya kind of asks if they could possibly go around. So to me, it kind of seems like it's like a sunken bowl type thing, and then there's, like, hills and shit around the sides.
Yeah.
So she's like, maybe we could make it around there. And there's less smoke in the hilly spot, but there's still a lot of smoke. And the smoke is, like, the stuff that literally destroyed a body, it seems like.
Yeah, it's like, it seems like it's like acid smoke.
Yeah, it kind of, like, boils their skin, it kind of felt like. Oraya's kind of thinking, and she starts counting, and she realizes, like, the smoke is, like, really strong for 90 seconds, then it kind of clears for 90 seconds, and then it comes back for 90 seconds, so it's 90-second intervals. So she's like, okay, we could kind of see it coming, and Raihn says that the man that he killed yesterday was Shadowborn, so he decides he's going to go fly to get his cloak.
Yeah, they've got, like, kind of... He has, like, a magic-y sort of cloak that can protect them from enchantments or something like that.
Yeah. So I think he's kind of hoping that he has one because he's not sure yet. But they're like, this is our best bet because, like, we can't just go out and hide behind a rock.
Yeah.
So he flies to where he thinks the body is because he can obviously stay in the fog more than she can. And after about 55 seconds, she decides, like, she's going to go after him. But he shows up before she can actually leave. And the cloak is a Vathrian silk. And he says it filters everything out. So it's super expensive and hard to work with. And that's why they only make things like cloaks and stuff and not, like, full body protection.
Right.
So they decide with the cloak, Raihn can wear it, they'll fly for 90 seconds, and then they'll stop and hide under the cloak for 90 seconds, and then they'll fly for 90 seconds, and then hide for 90 seconds, all the way to the end. And she'll kind of, like, be the one to defend them against other contestants or beasts or anything else on the way, since his hands will be full with her. So they start, and she's very conscious of him holding her after last night. And you're like, woo! Love it.
Yeah.
I guess her other job, too, is to count, because, like, that's super important. So while he flies, she counts every 90 seconds, and they, like, have to huddle super close under the cloak, and, like, it's hard to get all of them underneath it. And, like, even under the cloak, they can still feel the smoke. Like, it's not completely protecting them, but it's, like, protecting them enough that it's just... Yeah, it's just unpleasant under there. It's not actually, like, killing them.
Yeah.
They're about halfway there when they come out of the crouch, and there are 3 wolves that immediately attack them. And Raihn uses his magic to push them back. But he's pretty drained, and she ends up gutting one, and then she gets one in the throat as it goes for her. And the third is, like, harder to kill, and she's still counting this whole time. And I'm like, how? But time is running out, and Raihn, like, is bit by this wolf as it tries to bite Oraya. He takes the bite for her. And she ends up killing it with, like, her sword and a burst of night fire. And then they have to cover themselves immediately because the fog is coming. And they didn't really have enough time to get perfectly in under the cloak. So Raihn isn't fully covered, and the tips of his wings end up, like, left out of the cloak. And obviously injured. And, like, when she looks at him, like, after that 90 seconds, she looks at the tips of his wings, and she's like, oh, no, they're bleeding. And then she's like, oh, no, that's not blood. They're just red. So they keep going, and they get to a spot, and she's like, there may be 2 more rounds away from getting to the exit, and she can finally see the arch that is there. And Raihn kind of sees something, and he's just looking down, and she's like, we should be moving. Like, what the fuck? But she kind of looks at what he's looking at, and where they are kind of looks like a circle. Like, I guess they're kind of looking from above, and they can see that it kind of looks like a circle. And she kind of realizes, like, this actually looks man-made, and she's kind of confused. And she looks at Raihn, and he is devastated, and he picks up something silver, and he tells her, like, this is Selene. And she's like, no, it can't be. Like, she does not believe it at all. But then she thinks, like, she's studied the maps of Selene so much, and she starts to, like, kind of picture the map over this place, and she's like, oh shit, like, those are buildings, and, like, I know which buildings they are, like, these were roads. And she gets that, like, it is a city, and it's the aftermath, like, what they smell in the air, not the fog, but, like, the, like, feeling and the scent in the air is the aftermath of Asteris and Asteris, whatever you say it. And she kind of just goes numb because she realizes that Vincent killed them all.
Yeah, he literally decimated an entire town.
Yeah. And she wanted to go, obviously she wanted to come back here to see if her family was here. So, like, this is not great.
Yeah. So essentially, like, he has destroyed her chance to find her family.
Yeah. It's, yeah, very bad. And, like, obviously, he had said that he was going to destroy anybody that might be against him, but, like, this is almost more personal to her than...
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is, obviously, you should probably care that he's just destroying a whole city anyway, but it is kind of like a wake-up call to her. Like, he didn't care about any of the humans either. Like, and it's... Yeah. There's so many different, like, parts that are starting to come together for her, I think.
Yeah. So, I guess we're going to wrap it up for this week. If you want to get in touch with us and share your thoughts on anything you heard in our episode, or if you have any book suggestions for us, please reach out to us by email at coffeeandcoread@gmail.com, or Instagram or Facebook at coffeeandcoread and coffee.coread on TikTok.
So next week, we're going to be finishing this book. We'll be reading chapters 41 to 56, and you can make sure to follow along. And if you're enjoying our chats, don't forget to follow, rate, and review wherever you get our content. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you on the next page.